Rev up your engines! All right, my grandson bought a lifted truck. And the big question is, am I going to disinherit him now? If you've watched any of my videos, you know I'm not a big fan of lifted trucks because of problems that they can have. So today, I'm going to show you the pluses and minuses of lifted trucks. Now, granted, I checked this car out with him when he went to buy it, and it's an excellent truck. Under the hood, it's got the big 5.7 liter V8 I-Force engine. It's a powerful beast. This particular one is a 2012. And as we climb inside and start her up, listen to that baby purr. Typical Toyota quality. Smooth, it's not shaking. Now it does have 200,000 miles on it, but then again, I've seen many of them with over 500,000 miles. Original engines and trannies still in them. And he got a great deal on it. $7,500. I've seen these things go for $1,820 with that kind of mileage being a 2012. But as you can see, it's been lifted. It had a lot of modifications of steel putting it on so it can do some serious business. So what are the pros and cons? Well, let's start with the bad thing. Well, this is a big truck. The one bad thing about Toyota Tundras are they get pretty low gas mileage. Seriously, the best you're going to get this is in the high teens. And if you raise the vehicle, it's now less aerodynamic. I mean, look at my Celica. It's lower to the ground, it's more aerodynamic for better gas mileage. So the higher the vehicle, the more air resistance, the worse the gas mileage. And most guys who lift them like this truck, they put on bigger tires. The bigger the tires, the more radical the tread, the more the friction. Again, lower gas mileage. And of course, higher prices. My grandson priced 4 new tires, $600 a piece, baby. But on the other hand, it's not as bad as you might think. With all these modifications, this thing only gets about 1 mile a gallon worse than it would without all that stuff on. And of course, raising it up higher raises the center of gravity. The higher the center of gravity, the easier the vehicle can roll and flip over when you're cornering fast. That's one of the reasons race cars are so low to the ground, so they don't flip over in a race. You got to be careful with speed driving on these things if you get too high up in the air. And if you don't already know, as my grandson didn't until he bought it, if you're driving at higher speeds when it's windy outside, up in the air, these things are like giant sails and they get blown all over the road. You better hang on to that wheel tight. But of course, there are advantages of being higher. One, you can see a lot better. If there's accidents ahead, if something's going on, you can see a lot further toward the horizon. That's why the pirate ships had crow's nests on the top, so you can go up in the air and see what's going on around you. You can always have a guy standing up here looking around if you want. And of course, with all this extra clearance, you're not going to get stuck if you go off-road. If you get in really dirty, muddy roads out in the country. We're living in Tennessee here. We got a lot of land out in the country. This thing's great for that. And as you can see, it's also had the bumper modified. Solid steel. This baby's ready for action. Guy down the street has one. He pulled 19,000 pounds of plate steel. Had no problems at all. Lifted. Now this one was done pretty good. You can see it's got the off-road racing shocks that have been put on it. Longer brake hose assembly. The original guy that did that stuff didn't do that bad of a job. Got the serious front bumper. Now there's some steel. You can push things out of the way with this baby. You can see the front's a little higher than the back. I would have done the back a little bit differently. Put better rear shocks and beef up the rear suspension too, which wasn't done. But be that as it may, it's still higher, so even if you're just filling the bed and not towing something, you don't have to worry about dragging. This thing's still going to have tons of clearance while still being a relatively comfortable vehicle inside. Somebody took care of the interior too. For a work truck, this thing's in immaculate shape. Now as we go underneath, we can see this hasn't been too radically changed. You'll see that the drive shaft is not at too radical of an angle. If you lift them too high, then these things are down way too low. You can actually snap the yoke off the back of the transmission. But this was a relatively conservative lift, which is not that bad. But here's one big advantage of a lifted truck. Check it out. Look at all this room for working. You don't even have to jack it up in the air to work on half the stuff. Though truth be told, you're gonna need one big jack and some gigantic jack stands if you get a flat tire, and you're gonna have to change that out. Yes, it is a truck, And it does have an actual spare tire. So you don't have one of those baby spares, but you're still gonna have to jack the thing up and change the tire. Now since they're so high up and it's such a pain to change tires, you're gonna get one of these. There's two things you need. Get a tire plug kit, so if you do get a flat, you can fix it on the vehicle and not have to take it off. I've got videos showing you how to do that. And get a real solid air pump like this Fire that I've had for years. They're very simple. You just hook them up to the battery. That's it. Flip the switch, it pumps with a gauge. If you have to, do like I did. I spliced in longer wires so it will reach further. And realize this has a dual purpose. Get low on air, you can fill it up. You get a flat, you can fill it up. But let's say you get stuck in the mud or sand. You can let air out of the tire, it'll go flatter, have more traction, get out of the mud. Then you can fill it back up with your air pump. Brilliant idea. Just don't get some piece of crap that's all plastic. This, solid. It's Fire. I've had it for years. Things never let me down. It's got an accurate gauge, turns itself on. It's even got a cool little light on it if you want it. You can't see it at night, you can turn the light on. It's solid metal. It's not plastic crap. This thing pumps them up fast, it's reliable, and as you can see with the metal, it has cooling fins. So it's not one of those cheap plastic ones that it gets hot, the plastic melts. This is metal. You use it, it gets hot, it's not gonna melt the metal. It really works well. That's what you want, a good one, not some cheap piece of plastic crap. So let's take this lifted truck for a ride and see how it goes. Well, it's Toyota, so it starts right up. And as I said, you got a high view. You're high up in the air. You can certainly see where you're going. The lift hasn't adversely affected transmission. You step on it, downshifts, take your foot off, shifts up very smoothly. Now, as you can see here, the tire pressure warning light is on, but you expect that because it's got the fancy tires. I checked, they don't even have sensors in them. Whoever put those bigger tires and rims on, they didn't put tire pressure sensors in them. I checked with my machine, but who cares? Air pressure gauges work perfectly fine if you check them every once in a while. Now, I do have to say, driving around the neighborhood, you feel like king of the highway. You're way up in the air. You can certainly see a long way out into the fields there. And it's not windy today, so I don't feel any wind buffeting yet. Now, yes, this is a big, heavy truck. There's no arguing that. So let's come to a stop here and we'll see what these 300 plus horsepower will do. On your mark, get set, go. It gets up and goes, and you can see it still shifts really smooth. Makes that roaring V8 noise. And those fence posts are just starting to fly by. Now, since this truck hasn't been radically lifted, you notice the transmission shifts fine. It doesn't have any particularly bad handling aspects. It hasn't been raised insanely high, and the tires are larger than stock, but they're not big, gigantic monster truck tires with mud tread. They're gonna make a ton of noise. You can hear cruising down the road. It's not that noisy. Pretty quiet inside the cabin. It still has very stable handling. If we go from lane to lane, handles good, doesn't have any particular problems. And as we come to a stop, still idles like a dream. No shake, no nothing. Doesn't matter that it's got 200,000 plus miles on it. The only rumble I feel here is the dump truck that's next to us at the red light. So now you know a little bit more about lifted trucks, so you can make a wise decision. And I guess I won't disinherit my grandson, because it is a pretty good truck. And here's some bonus questions and answers. Genuine Music says, Scotty, a long time ago I was your 1 million subscriber. Yeah, I'm at 4. I just got 4 million subscribers now. I want to know the difference between a 4-wheel drive and an all-wheel drive. What are the pros and cons? Okay, a 4-wheel drive vehicle, like take a Ford truck or something, they have normally rear-wheel drive, but they can also be put into 4-wheel drive so the front wheels and the rear-wheel drives can pull you along. So when you need all 4 wheels to drive, you put it in 4-wheel drive. When you don't, you put it in 2-wheel drive and you get better gas mileage. All-wheel drive is a system that you can't shut off. Well, at least most of them you can't shut off. And they're run by computers on all the modern ones so that all 4 wheels drive. You have better traction, rain, snow driving is better that way, but on the converse side, you get worse gas mileage and they cost a lot more money to fix. And if you do have a 4-wheel drive vehicle and you get a bad tire, you have to replace all 4 tires because they have to be exactly the same width and wear, or you will wear out internal parts of the all-wheel drive system if one tire is slightly different than the other one. So realize with an all-wheel drive system, every time you get a bad tire, you got to buy 4 new ones if you want to make it last. So it can get expensive, especially if you live in some places with a lot of nails. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, Remember to ring that bell.